The Sega Game Gear, a necessity for gracious living. Or is it, though? Hey guys, what's up, what's happening? I am still the King of Games 98 at your service. How y'all doing? Hope y'all are doing good and staying safe. And on today's video, so my original plan for this video was going to be showing you guys my entire Sony PSP or PlayStation Portable game collection. But the problem I ran into with that is I owned so many PSP games that I couldn't record the whole video all in one video. It kept splitting it up into parts. At one point it was 2 parts. I think at one point it even did 3 parts. I don't want to do that. And I tried this about I tried recording that video about 4 or 5 times, and I just gave up eventually. Because I was just like, I don't want to do this in parts. I want to do it all in one take. So then I started thinking about what other consoles or handhelds do I own that I don't own as many games for, that I could do a good, game collection video of. And that's when it came to me for Sega Game Gear. So without further ado, guys, this is going to be my Sega Game Gear game collection video as of 2023. Now, I'm going to first show you guys my 2 different colored Sega Game Gear handhelds, and then I'm going to get right into the games because I own a total of 22 Sega Game Gear games, and, basically the structure of this video is going to be the same as my PS Vita game collection video. So I'm going to, briefly talk to you about the games, how I came to buy them, or I should say where I bought them from, if I remember, how much I paid for them, if I remember, and if I played them, what I thought of them. So yeah, that's how this video is going to be structured out. So first, starting off with the Game Gears themselves. First I'm going to talk to you about my gray colored Sega Game Gear. And, well, it's seen better days. I bought it used from one of my local flea markets. Don't remember how much I paid for it. Love that it had the wrist strap, too. That's cool. And, oh, the battery covers. That's a plus. Huge plus. And, yeah, I don't remember because I went through a couple of gray-colored Sega Game Gears before my dad helped me to get one finally working. So, yeah, this was the one. And now, as you can see on the right side, the battery terminals are very clean, but it was on the left side, it had some corrosion. And that was what the problem with this one was. And thanks to my dad cleaning it, he got it to work. And it worked for a long time. It lasted, but sadly, as of the recording, well, no, actually, I can't even say that. Unfortunately, that Sega Game Gear stopped working, and then the same thing happened with my other one. So, this is the blue limited or special edition, I think it's limited edition, Sega Game Gear. And I have an interesting story as how I came to acquire this. So I will briefly tell you guys that real quick. And then we'll get into my actual Game Gear game collection. So I found and bought this blue Sega Game Gear at NJ GamerCon back when it was held in Runnymede, New Jersey. For those of you who don't know, it is currently being held in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, I believe at the Plaza Hotel. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the name of it. And this was sitting on a vendor's table. I forget how much he was asking for it, but I brought some games that I had doubles of to sell or trade. I think they were all N64 games, and I said, hey, would you trade for that? He said yes. I showed him what I had. He took all of the games I had, and I gave him some money out of pocket, and we made a deal for this. I want to say I think I gave him $30 or $40 cash out of my own pocket for this, and I was very freaking ecstatic and happy to get this. And what was great was he had batteries. He brought batteries with him, so he actually could show and prove that it works, and he let me play a game on it too. So I was very ecstatic and happy to get that. Now, unfortunately, as I said, the gray colored Sega Game Gear stopped working a long time ago, and unfortunately, the same thing happened with my blue colored Sega Game Gear. So, as of right now, neither of these work, and I can't play any of my Sega Game Gear games, and so therefore, I kind of stopped buying for. I stopped buying games for my Sega Game Gear because I can't play them. And I can't even prove if they work. So, it's kind of like, what's the point? Now, after doing some homework online, I found out that the capacitors in these are really bad and prone to leak and corrode. And between the capacitors on, I think, the soundboard and the screen board, they're just known. And that's exactly what happened with both of these. The screens went, and I'm pretty sure the sound went in both. So, kind of sucks. But what are you going to do? All right, so let's get into the games. Okay, first game we are starting off with is Primal Rage. And I happen to own the instruction manual for this game as well. Now, Primal Rage is a 2D one-on-one fighting game that is very reminiscent of Mortal Kombat, but instead of, Mortal Kombat, you fight, Johnny Cage or Sub-Zero or Scorpion. Primal Rage, it has you playing as animals and fighting other animals. So it's really cool. It is fun. I don't remember where I bought this, nor do I remember how much I paid for it, but I'm happy to say I own it portably on the Sega Game Gear. Next game up we have is a classic. This is Sonic the Hedgehog for Sega Game Gear. This was, without a doubt, one of the first games I got from my Game Gear. And what's great about this is a great port of Sonic the Hedgehog 1. And on top of that, it is a stupidly cheap game. Like, this is maybe a $5 to $10 game tops. I mean, if I had the box and manual, well, if I had the box, because I have the manual, maybe it'd be a slightly more than that. But, like, even then, it's still a really cheap game to get. I don't remember where I bought this, but I remember I played the hell out of this. It is that good. Highly, highly recommend. Okay, these next two games have to do with one another, so I'm going to talk about them both at the same time. We have Shinobi, and then we have Shinobi 2: The Silent Fury. Oh my freaking god, these games are amazing. Even for and on the Sega Game Gear, they're amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I'll be honest with you guys, I do not remember where I bought either of these games, nor do I remember how much I paid for them. But I do remember I bought Shinobi 2: The Silent Fury first, and then because of how much I enjoyed this one, I then tracked down Shinobi 1 for Sega Game Gear, and so now I own both. And Sega Lord X recently did a video reviewing both of these games, and he just had nothing but good things to say about them, and I could not agree more with him. Highly recommend if you're in the Ninja games or if you love the Shinobi video game franchise. Cannot recommend enough. Okay, this next game I think is the rarest Sega Game Gear game I own. And that game happens to be Tails Adventure. Now, this is an interesting game with a unique story of how I came to acquire this. I played this game before I even bought this game. And now I'm sure you're probably saying to yourself, wait, what do you mean by that? Hold on, let me explain. So I owned, well, I still have it. I own Sonic Gems Collection, the game for the GameCube. And I'm pretty sure this game is on that. And so I played that game back when I was in middle school. And so I played this game before I ever even owned a physical copy for the Game Gear. And for what it was, I liked it. So then I found this game at a local small business video game store by the name of Level Up Entertainment. And they're in the Hamilton, is it Hamilton or Hamilton? No, they're in the Hamilton Mall, which is located towards the shore in New Jersey. And I believe they had $40 on this game. So that's what I paid for it, 40 bucks. And over time, I was just amazed at how much this game has just gone up and exploded in value. I didn't check before recording this video, but I want to say that even this game loose cartridge is worth over $100. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong down below in the comment section. But yeah. Next game up we have is Tazmania for Sega Game Gear. I believe I bought this at a local Goodwill. I think I paid like maybe $4 or $5 for it. And it's actually a pretty fun and decent side-scrolling platformer game. And I could be wrong, but I might own this on Sega Genesis too. I'm not sure about that. I would have to go and check, but yeah. So this is a pretty decent side-scrolling platformer game, and it's cheap. So if you're into side-scrolling platformers, you might want to give this one a try. Okay, up next we have Mortal Kombat for Sega Game Gear. This one I also remember buying locally at a Goodwill. Again, I think I might have paid $3, $4 tops for it. And, well, it's Mortal Kombat portably on Sega Game Gear. Is it great? Not really. Is it awful? No, I wouldn't really say that either. It's just okay. Like, if you were to play the first Mortal Kombat on Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, obviously that's the better version. Would this compare to either of those? No, not even in the slightest. I actually, believe it or not, years ago, I had Mortal Kombat on original Game Boy, and let me tell you something, that was awful. That game was so bad, it was next to unplayable. That's how bad that was. Next game we have up is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, technically, I own two copies of this, one loose cartridge and the other complete in box. But this one I bought first, and then I bought that one second. And like with Sonic 1, I bought this not too long after I first got my Game Gear, and wow, I put a lot of time and hours into this game too, and let me say, ladies and gentlemen, it is just as good, if not better, than the first Sonic game on Game Gear, and it is a stupidly cheap game as well. So, like, you can pick this up for $5 maybe or so dollars, and it's great. It's Sonic 2 portably, and it's fantastic. Okay, and continuing talking about the Blue Blur himself, we have more Sonic games because one can never have too many Sonic games. So next up we have Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos for Sega Master System. Now you'll have to excuse me here, guys, for my ignorance. I don't know a lot about this specific Sonic game, although I do know it was also ported to the Sega Master System. I know that. But other than that, I don't know a lot about this game. I don't remember where I bought this, nor do I remember how much I paid for it either. But yeah, it's I don't believe this specific Sonic game is a side-scrolling platformer. I believe it plays differently. I want to say in like a 3D isometric angle, if I remember right. I don't know. Maybe that could be totally wrong for all I know. But yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos. Kind of a weird name too, if you ask me. Next up, we have Sonic Blast. They, for whatever reason, took the 3D out of the title and just made it Sonic Blast. Now, I played Sonic 3D Blast on my Sega Genesis. Absolutely loved it. And I think I also own it on Sega Saturn for that matter, too. So when I came across the Game Gear version, I was like, yeah, why not? You know, it's a no-brainer. I do not remember, however, where I bought this or how much I paid for it. So, yeah. Okay, up next, we have Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. This is, in my personal opinion, one of the funnest and best pinball games I've ever played. Yes, I know that is not a word, funnest, but you know what? I just used it. Get over it. Yeah, this is such a fun Sonic the Hedgehog themed pinball game. I find myself just playing that just every so often and just sitting back and relaxing. It's just a very easygoing, relaxing type game to play. I don't remember where I bought this, nor do I remember how much I paid for it, but the great news is if you like a good pinball game, it is very cheap, and even though it's a cheap game, it is a very good fun game too. So the next two games I bought together at the same time on the same day. So I'm going to talk about them both at the same time. So we have Streets of Rage 1 for Sega Game Gear with its instruction manual. And then we have Vampire Master of Darkness for Sega Game Gear, also with its instruction manual. Now, I bought both of these games back when I worked at a small business local video game store that was literally 10 minutes away from my house. And it was called All Gen Games. And someone traded these both in with their instruction manuals. And when I saw them, the next day I worked, I freaked out. I believe we had like $25 on Streets of Rage, and I think we had Vampire Master of Darkness priced at $20. And I was like, I don't even care. I don't even care. I want both of them. Shut up and take my money. And on top of that, since I worked there, I got a 20% off employee discount. So I was very happy to pick both of these up. Now, what's funny is I didn't realize this till I picked the actual game up and looked at it as Streets of Rage. Someone went to the liberty of printing out a label with cheat codes on it for the game and put the sticker or label, no, label, and put the label on the back of the cartridge. So if you own Streets of Rage for Sega Game Gear, you can pause it at any moment and write these cheat codes down. Yeah, so there you go. If you just wrote them down, you're welcome. So that's that. And Vampire Master of Darkness. Okay, if you've never heard of this game, you're probably saying to yourself or asking to me through the video, why did you buy this game? That's a great question. If you asked that, I'm so happy you did. So I love Castlevania. Castlevania is one of my favorite video game franchises of all time. And well, you see, Vampire Master of Darkness is essentially Sega's answer to Castlevania on the NES. It plays identically to Castlevania. Like, I mean, one-to-one comparison. Like, that close. Now, Vampire Master of Darkness was ported to the Sega Master System and the Game Gear, of course. And I think I might have heard about this game. I don't know. It was from a YouTuber. I don't know if it was Sega Lord X or what, but I definitely heard about this from a YouTuber. So, shout out to whoever that was. And then as for Streets of Rage, well, I love Streets of Rage on the Sega Genesis, but Streets of Rage 1 and 2 were also ported to the Sega Master System as well as Game Gear. Now, obviously the superior version is the Genesis version, but it's still cool that these existed on the Game Gear and Master System regardless. So, yeah. Those are those two games. The next two games I'm also going to bundle together because they're basically the same game, but slightly different. So we have Columns and then Super Columns. Now, if you've never heard of or played Columns before, then you're probably asking yourself or me, what the heck is Columns? That's a great question. Basically, Columns was Sega's answer to Nintendo's Tetris. See, the Game Boy and the NES, they had Tetris. Sega didn't have a great puzzle game like that until they came out with Columns. Columns is basically a ripoff or clone of Tetris, whichever word you want to use. And instead of stacking blocks, different shaped, well, instead of stacking different shapes, you're stacking different colored jewels. And you want to match a set of 4 of the same colored jewels together to clear one row. And if you, of course, like Tetris, if you get to the top, it's game over. And that's basically Columns in a nutshell. I don't remember where I bought either of these, and I don't remember how much I paid for them, but I do remember at one point, like with Sonic, Columns was a pack-in game for the Game Gear. So, thought that was pretty cool and worth mentioning. Okay, up next we have NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Now, for those of you who may or may not know this, I'm not really a big fan of sports video games. I'm like very selective when it comes to sports video games. NBA Jam, however, is one of my all-time favorites. I love it on the Genesis and on the Sega Saturn. Yeah, they're fantastic. I prefer the older NBA Jam games though. I don't like the newer ones. Like I never played that one that was on the Wii, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360 because it just didn't really look good. But yeah, I don't remember where I bought this, nor do I remember how much I paid for it. But it's NBA Jam portably. How can you go wrong? Like, you can't, even if it's an 8-bit version. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to talk about these next two games together because I actually remember buying both of these together at the same time on the same day. So speaking of NBA Jam, we have Arch Rivals, the arcade game, and Wimbledon Tennis. Now, I've never played Arch Rivals before or Wimbledon Tennis. Why am I having a hard time saying that? I don't know. I never played either of these games before, but I came across them locally at a Goodwill. I think they were like $3 or $4 a piece, and I figured, yeah, I mean, why not at that price? This is similar to NBA Jam, but it's not identically, it's not like a one-to-one comparison to NBA Jam. It's like NBA Jam, but I like NBA Jam more. Now, as for this Wimbledon tennis game, why did I want this? Well, not because it was cheap and not because it was there, but because in high school I tried tennis for the first time my freshman year and I loved it so much I played it all 4 years. So I figured, you know what? Why not? I enjoy a good tennis game. Why not? So I picked them both up. This next game we have is Chuck Rock. Now, I don't know a lot about this series other than I think there was 2 games made and then a racing game. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. Chuck Rock is a side-scrolling platformer that is set in prehistoric era and you play as a caveman. Other than that, that's about all I could tell you. I'm pretty sure I have the sequel on Sega CD too. I can also tell you that. As for this game, I don't remember where I bought it, nor do I remember how much I paid for it either. And yeah. And next game up we have is Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. Now, I want to first tell this story of how I came to know about this game, and then another story that involves this game, but the Genesis version. Okay, so the YouTuber Sega Lord X reviewed this game. Now, this game was ported to the Sega Master System, Genesis, and Game Gear. He basically covered all three ports of this game all in one video. I then came across this game at a local small business video game store by the name of Bandit Video, which is located in Turnersville, New Jersey. And they only wanted $10 for it. I was like, oh my God, that is so incredibly worth the $10 and then some. So I bought it. Now, this is a side-scrolling platformer game that Sega Lord X pointed out. It is a Disney licensed game that stars Mickey Mouse, and it is a phenomenal Disney licensed video game that I'm pretty sure was either published or produced by Sega themselves. And you see, that right there is what makes this game so good. It was either published or produced by Sega, or no, excuse me, it was either published or developed by Sega themselves. And that's what makes this game so good. Now, the second story involves the Genesis version of Castle of Illusion. Years ago, when I want to say I was in either middle or just starting out in high school, I bought a Sega Genesis Model 1 console with some games, and one of the games was Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse, for Sega Genesis. I tried it, it didn't do anything for me, and therefore I sold it. Now, all these years later, fast forward, I kind of regret doing that, but it's not a very rare or hard to find game, so I'm sure I'll come across the Genesis version again, so that way I can say I own it for Genesis and Game Gear. But yeah, for $10, this is such a great game. It's a no-brainer to pick up. Okay, and then the two complete in box games I own are Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Now, believe it or not, this copy of Sonic 2 is actually brand new, still factory sealed. When I got it, the hang tab was just kind of pushed down like that, and it was just kind of like that. So I kind of slightly opened it, but like not fully, just so the hang tab could, stick up. Excuse me. And I've been hanging this game on my wall in my bedroom with a tack just right through it like that. And because I just thought the artwork was so cool. I bought this locally at a flea market, I think for like $10 or $15. And I was ecstatic because I was like, dude, this is like brand new. It's crazy. And as for Sonic Triple Trouble, on the other hand, I do not remember where I bought this, nor do I remember how much I paid for it. But it is complete in box. Game, manual, and box. I mean, it's missing inserts, but yeah. Otherwise, it's complete in box. Okay, and then real quickly, I'll show these, and that's pretty much going to do it for this video. Now, I found and bought an original instruction manual for the Game Gear. Now, I'm not saying this is the original one that came with either of the two that I own and bought, but I just found it, and I was like, you know what? That's kind of cool, It's in really nice condition. So I figured why not, Now this, on the other hand, I have never seen another one of these. And so since I'd never seen one of these before, I had to buy it. This is a Seaware carry-all Game Gear plastic travel case. Unfortunately, you can see one of the latches is broken, but other than that, it's in really good condition for its age. And I found and bought this at a local flea market, I think for like $5 or $10. I seriously think that's all I paid for it. And I've never seen another one like it. And what I love about that carrying case the most is that it's actually in the shape of a Game Gear itself. That is what I freaking love. Whew! Okay, guys, so that's my entire Sega Game Gear game collection as of 2023. I currently own 22 Game Gear games, and like I explained to you guys that these no longer work, I'm probably not going to be buying any more Sega Game Gear games. So my Game Gear collection is probably going to stay at that 22 game mark. And you know what? I'm okay with that. My dad taught me how to solder, but I'm not quite at the level where I could take these apart and replace capacitors on them. I do not know how to do that. That's a lot more skilled than what I know how to do Basically, I can solder wires together and, you know, reflow solder and do safe batteries. That's about it. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I'm still happy I own these. This is a piece of video game history, and especially Sega history. I have my two Sega Genesis hats with me in representation, and yeah, it's it's a fun hobby. I do really enjoy it. And for poops and giggles, I have my Sega Genesis Nomad because I figured, you know what? It kind of has to do with the Game Gear because the Game Gear came first, and then the Nomad came next. It was the successor to the Game Gear. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know down below in the comment section, do you own a Sega Game Gear in 2023, or did you own one back in the day? Let me know that down below in the comment section, and let me know what you thought of the 22 games I own for my Game Gear collection. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and take care.